However, every organization that I mention today has a counterpart where you're at. So it's important to know that the SBA is charged with helping small businesses that are interested in pursuing and winning federal government contracts. So we have programs that help with that arena. But some of the organizations that I mentioned as we get going that we partner with, they can help you if you're interested in getting contracts at the state or local level. And each state or local municipality might have a different way of entering into contracts than the federal government does. But some of the states, if they're large enough, they have some of the same certification processes. So I'm going to share my screen and hopefully that will work. It worked last week, so we'll see if it works again. Let's see. Just need to figure out how to get this going from the, let's see. There we go. So can you see that, Rose? Perfect. So before I get going too much into the contracting support, I do want to mention that the Small Business Administration has many programs to help American small businesses at every phase of development that your business is in, whether you're a startup and you're looking for capital, or whether you're a startup and you're looking for assistance with your business plan, or you're an established business and you're looking to enter into contracts with the government, or there's a pandemic or a natural disaster and you need a disaster loan or some assistance because of that natural disaster. So the SBA, we provide loan guarantee for small businesses. We work behind the scenes with banks and credit unions and nonprofit lenders to provide a government-backed guarantee. And in cases where those lending institutions don't feel comfortable lending to you directly because you might not have enough collateral or experience, you may be eligible for an SBA guarantee. We also have both official and non-official agency partners that help small businesses and entrepreneurs with business planning. And whether it's, help writing your business plan, help putting together a commercial loan request, or getting some marketing advice, we have several agencies that help small businesses with that for free, because our tax dollars have already paid for that. And those organizations are the Women Business Centers, the Small Business Development Centers, the SCORE chapters across the country and territories, and the Veteran Business Outreach Centers. Now, those are just the official agency partners. And what I mean by official is they get funding in part from the Small Business Administration. There are dozens of organizations, nonprofits here in Maine and probably in your state or where you are that also provide that type of business planning assistance. So one thing that you can do is if you go to sba.gov, that's our national website, and you can find the nearest district office to you. And we all have a district office webpage, and there are lists of the organizations that help you that are located where you are. We're going to talk tonight about the support we provide for government contractors. And we also, as many of you have probably heard, or maybe even been able to receive, the disaster advocacy, disaster loans and support that the SBA has. So the US government is the largest purchaser of goods and services in the world, and the US government, if you think about all the different agencies and the departments within those agencies, and the mission of the US government, it is just an enormous amount of purchasing power from offices within the SBA or the Department of Interior or Defense or Energy or Commerce, you name it. But when you think about the size of the government, the federal government, and the mission that all those different agencies have to provide for the common good, it doesn't make sense for all of that power to be all of those things to happen through government employees. There's not that many government employees for the size of the federal government. The SBA, we only have about 2,500 employees agency-wide. It makes more sense for the taxpayer, for the government to enter into contracts with private companies, small and not small, to help achieve this work, these missions. And people ask me all the time, well, does the government buy what I make or what I sell, or does the government, ever utilize my service? And I usually respond by saying it's probably easier to find out if the government is not allowed to buy what you're selling. There are some, because the government buys everything from number 2 pencils to Tomahawk missiles, and they come from private companies. And there are some services that the government by law can only get from certain businesses. So the vast majority of things out there in the commercial market could potentially be purchased by the government, either wholesale, through what we call the Government Services Administration schedule, or by entering into contracts where a business enters into a contract with the agency to provide the goods or services. So this right here is just an example of the government. The federal government is charged with making sure that every year, almost a quarter of the dollars contracted with companies, 23%, have to be what we call set aside for small businesses. So what that means is there are billions of dollars of contract opportunities that contracting officers are setting aside, so only small businesses and certain small business categories can compete for those types of contracts. And what that does is it shrinks the pool of competition that your small business will be up against. Now, there's still plenty of opportunities at what we call full and open competitions, where any business, large or small, can pursue that contract opportunity and put in a bid. But there are billions of opportunities for you as a small business owner to enter into a direct contract with the government, or to be a subcontractor for a company that has a contract with the government. And we'll talk about the we'll talk about the types of categories of small business ownership here as we get going. So this is just the the phone tree for the main district office, and we'll make sure that everyone gets a copy of this slide as we get going. But let's get right into it. So as I mentioned, the US government is the world's largest buyer of goods and services. This slide right here is actually, I apologize, it's a little bit dated. I think $430 billion is less than the average the last couple of years in how much the government has been spending in contracted dollars. And so I talked about the types of categories of ownership. Basically, the majority of the certifications are based on who owns the small business. And the definition of small business for most industries is any business that has less than 500 employees. So in Maine, in the small state of Maine, that's like 99.4% of our businesses are considered small by the federal government standards. Small disadvantaged businesses are and economically disadvantaged women-owned small businesses are businesses that are owned by socially and economically disadvantaged individuals. And so this is just a breakdown of the 4 or 5 types of categories of small business set aside. And so what happens is these percentages that you see, the 5%, 5%, 3%, 3%, those represent every year each agency has to try and achieve for the women-owned small business set-asides, 5% of their dollars that they award in contracts has to have gone to women-owned small businesses. And so when we're talking $600–700 billion a year, that equates to an enormous amount of opportunity for small businesses. So our role in government contracting is to do a couple of things. It's well, several things, but it's to help small businesses break through all the jargon and all the acronyms and basically the myth of selling to the government. Basically, if there's anything I want you to take away from tonight, it's that the US government is huge. The federal government is huge, and it's so big that it thinks it gets its own language when it comes to entering into contracts, and it does. And so if you can understand that language, then you can put yourself out there to bid on some of these contracts and really diversify your revenue. And it's not as difficult as it seems. If I can understand it, anybody here on today's call can understand it. Basically, we have a system. We have an electronic platform that you create a profile in that identifies you as a willing government contractor. And then there are lots of organizations, SBA included, that can help you look for those contracts, those contract opportunities, because contracts are, they're forecasted. As an example, where my office is in Bangor, Maine, my office is in the federal building. And that federal building is maintained by the General Services Administration. That's another federal agency. And there are a couple of federal employees who are custodians, and they help maintain that building. But the agency that's in charge of maintaining that building has a contract with a private company, a small business, for 5 years to help maintain the facilities at that building. That is an example of government contracting. And so we're going to talk about enrolling in that system, identifying contract opportunities, and then putting in bids for those contracting opportunities. And when we talk about the certification process, all of the certifications that I talk about, the contracting officers, like I mentioned, they're trying to hit those small business subcontracting goals. So the more of those certifications that you're eligible for, the more attractive, the more competitive you look to those contracting officers when they're looking for suitable small businesses that can do these types of contracts. So one of the terms that you hear a lot in contracting is prime contracting. And all that means is when we say prime, we mean the direct contract holder, whichever company has the direct contract with the agency for that work. That is a prime contractor. Now that contractor who's a prime may have entered into a contract with, let's say, the Department of the Navy to build something that contractor, that business can't build on their own. They need the help of other businesses to do that. So what they'll do is they'll look for subcontractors, and they'll enter into contracts with a subcontractor. And those numbers are also collected, especially when it's a large business. The large business is required to have a small business subcontracting plan and show that to our colleagues at the Small Business Administration, so we can make sure that those large businesses that are getting these large, enormous contracts of great value and taxpayer dollars, they're also utilizing the small business industrial base in the form of subcontracts. So one of the things that we routinely recommend small businesses who have never entered into government contracts is, if you want to get your foot in the door, you can start by looking for subcontract opportunities. Now, you have to remember that while the work you're doing is inherently governmental, your contract isn't going to be with the government at that point. If you're the sub, your contract is with that prime contractor, whichever business has the direct contract with the agency. But it's still a great way to diversify your revenue, and those are some of the building blocks of getting into prime contracting, because any work that you do as a small business, when you show your business's resume to the government, we look for what's called past performance. And all that means is, what type of work have you done before? What types of jobs have you done before? And you don't need government jobs, government contracts to get your own government contracts. It's helpful, but if you can show that you've been able to get work in the commercial sector and you can complete those contracts, that can absolutely help you on your way to getting government contracts. We also help with protests and appeals. Now, a protest happens when, let's say, we have a contracting agency that set aside a contract for a veteran-owned small business set aside, meaning only veteran-owned small businesses can compete for that contract. Now, let's say one of the other businesses that did not get that contract believes that the small business or the business that was awarded the contract is not eligible, is not really a veteran-owned small business. What if it's a local competitor and that business knows that they may have a veteran somewhere in the business, but it's sort of in name only, and the business is not actually managed and owned by veterans? So what they do is they protest to the government contracting agency and say, this contract was set aside for veteran-owned small businesses, and that business is not eligible. At that point, the SBA or the Government Accountability Office will be called to review the situation and the documents, and to make sure that the agency is awarding the contract to an eligible small business. And that's something that we take very seriously, because there are whether it's the NonADay program, which I'll talk about, or the veteran-owned small business set-asides, all of these programs have been developed and maintained to make sure that socioeconomically disadvantaged small businesses for people who have been, systemically and historically disenfranchised based on who they are, that they get a lot of these opportunities. So it's really important that this system works and people aren't cheating the system. We also help with the certification programs that we're talking about tonight. Now, in the past, some of these certifications that we're talking about tonight, the women-owned, the veteran-owned, they used to be what we call self-certified, meaning when you enter your business's profile in our database, you're just self-certifying that you check these qualifications. And what we found is that it's easier if on the front end, if small businesses can apply to the SBA and the SBA do a little bit better vetting and maintain a database of all these certified small businesses, it's much easier in that secure system for not only the SBA, but the contracting agencies to have more faith that these small business set-asides contracts are actually going to the right small businesses for these contracts. The other thing that one of the other things that we do is we provide training and events like this, basically contracting 101 tutorials. And we work with many organizations to provide not only matchmaking opportunities where you can meet government contracting agency officials and hear their upcoming contracts for the future, but we also have partner organizations who really can train you at no charge on how to submit a bid, how to understand a certain agency's vernacular, their language. Once you take the mystery out of government contracting, it's as simple as understanding that Uncle Sam is a customer and you just have to speak and market to that customer in the way that they need in order for you to get those opportunities. So the programs that I'm going to talk about tonight, they provide preferential treatment to these types of small businesses. When a contracting officer, when she is looking for potential, when she has a contract that is coming due, let's say it's a 5-year contract, and she knows that in the next couple of months she needs to put this contract out to bid again, because the contracts aren't forever. They have a certain amount of time to them to allow competition. So she's going to look in the databases that the SBA and some of the other federal agencies maintain to see how many capable small businesses might be eligible to bid on this contract. And if that contracting officer finds at least 2 capable, we call it the rule of 2 capable small businesses, then she has the authority and the discretion to set aside that contract when that announcement comes out for only those types of small businesses to apply and put a bid in for those contracts. Now, the SBA, we can't ever direct an agency to set aside a contract for a certain type of category. What the contracting officers do is, based on their goals throughout the year, if halfway through the fiscal year, the contracting officer knows that she's already hit her 5% for, let's say, veteran-owned small businesses, but she hasn't, she's only at 3% for the women-owned small business. She knows, I've got to set these contracts aside if I can find enough women-owned small businesses to apply for this. So that's how that process works. Simply signing up in the platform and identifying your business, your small business, as a willing contractor doesn't guarantee that you're going to get contracts. It's just like, just because you put a sign in front of your business doesn't mean someone's going to come in, right? You still have to find ways to market your business to the agency buyers, so you can find out what they're looking for contracts. And part of that marketing assistance and help is what the SBA does. So the 8A program, many of the programs at the SBA, whether it's on the lending side or the contracting side, the names are just basically because I think it's just what section of the Small Business Act did that come from when that law was written. And so I believe the 8A program, that's where it gets the name from. But the 8A program is a program that was created in 1978. It is for small businesses that whose owners have been historically discriminated against, frankly. Black-owned small businesses, Native American-owned small businesses, women-owned small businesses, veteran-owned small businesses. Now, some of these categories of Black-owned businesses and Native American-owned businesses, you're presumed eligible based on your social class, and then provided all other parts of your business are small, you're eligible. Other types of businesses, like women-owned small businesses and veteran-owned businesses, you have to provide a narrative. You have to provide examples of how you being a member of that class, you were discriminated against socially and economically. And then once you're found eligible, now again, this is only for contracting. Once you're found eligible, this is a business development program. It's 9 years, and throughout the 9 years, you're allowed to get sole source contracts, which means you're allowed to get contracts that you don't have to bid on. You still have to market your firm, but you don't, once the contracting officers are notified, and we help with that. The 8A firm is, the 8A portfolio was one of my responsibilities here in the district office. Once the agencies know that you're a certified 8A firm, if they think that you have the capacity to complete this contract, they're able to send me what's called an offer letter, and then the 8A official, the SBA official can accept that contract on your behalf. So you'll get that contract without having to compete on it. The goal of the program is at the end of the 9 years, because you were able to get business development assistance, sole source contracts, and you go through the 2 phases of the contract of the program. At the end of the 9 years, you're now competitive. You're at the same starting line as all the other businesses that you weren't starting at the same starting line with. There are 2 phases of the 8A program. The first 4 years is called the developmental phase, and during that phase, you can get sole source contracts as you're getting developmental assistance from the SBA and some of our programs within the 8A program, some of our resources. The last 5 years of the program, you can still get sole source contracts, but you have to start getting revenue that's not just 8A contracts. And year 5, for example, 15% of your revenue has to come from non-8A contracts. And then year 6, it's got to be 25%. And then as you get closer to graduation, your sole source contracts and your non-sole source 8A contracts even out. So when you graduate from the program, you're now competitive. It's a great program. Like I said, certified firms are eligible to receive sole source and set aside. There's limits on the size of the contract that you're allowed to get, and the training and assistance in business development resource and programs that we have that's free just from being in the program is called the 7J program. And the 7J, the agency has entered into contracts with businesses that help train you on different types of government contracting programs and requirements. Every year during the SBA's 8A program, you have to go through an annual review process, and that is simply the agency's opportunity to make sure that you're getting the business development assistance that you need, that you're able to complete these contracts, and that you're not needing to graduate early. We've had many 8A participants be able to graduate early because they sized out, or they were getting contracts to the point where they didn't need the business assistance that the SBA 8A program has. So each year we try and review your business plan and your marketing and your strategy to make sure once you graduate, you can move on to other types of contracts. Part of the reason that you have to begin to get non-8A contracts is the contracts that are awarded to 8A firms. Those contracts, once they're in the program, as we refer to them, they stay in the program unless extenuating circumstances are met, and the agency needs that contract to be released. So what that means is, if you get a facilities maintenance contract as an 8A firm, and it's an 8A contract, once you graduate the program and that contract expires, you can't get that contract again. It's gonna go to another 8A firm to help build that firm's capacity and development. So all of our certification programs, the primary thing that the agency is looking at are personal net worth and who owns and controls the business. The 51% owned and controlled, daily managed, is very important. A lot of times businesses may have, depending on how your business is structured, if you're a corporation, an S corp or something, you might have a board, or you might have owners referred to as minority owners who own less than you, but they may have we call it negative control, when someone who owns less than 51% of a small business has voting right, not voting rights, but the last say. Let's say there's a business that's owned by a socially and economically disadvantaged person. We call it a disadvantaged individual. That's the term the agency uses. They own 51%, but there's an owner who's not disadvantaged, who owns less than 51%, but in the bylaws of the company, there's language that says if the 51% owner ever decides to sell the business, they have to get permission from the 49% owner before they can sell that business. And in the SBA's view, that means that the minority owner, the 49% owner, has negative control, because the 51% owner, the disadvantaged individual, doesn't have the final say. They don't have complete control of the small business. So those are just examples of what the SBA looks at. And the next few slides are going to go through each category of certification, and all of this information. It's a lot of information to put on a PowerPoint. It's a lot of information to read on our website. It's important to know that there are organizations that can help you apply for all of these certification programs for free. And not only will they help you by telling you what documents you need to gather to submit for your application, they'll help you review your documents so you know before you apply if you're eligible. Because what we don't want, and what I see a lot, frankly, unfortunately, is I see small businesses apply for these programs on their own and come to find out they weren't eligible at the time of application. And so our agency I think we do a really good job. We don't like to just automatically deny small businesses when they apply for these programs. What we do is we send a return letter and we say, at this point, you're not eligible because of this structure or because of this reason or because of this document. And if you can address this or correct this, then we'll keep your application moving. But it takes, if you can do the work beforehand with the partners that I'm going to mention in a little bit, to make sure that you're eligible at the time of application, your application is going to go a lot quicker, and that just saves everybody time. And then you're able to go after some of these contracts and say, I am an 8A business on your business's resume. I am a woman-owned small business. So because you don't ever want to claim that you're one of these certifications if you're not. You don't want to tell Uncle Sam you're something you're not. The next type of business certification is called the HUBZone program, and that stands for the Historically Underutilized Business Zone Program. This is a program that was created in 1997. It was based off a European model. So there's a fact you probably didn't need to know or want to know, but there you go. And what the goal of this program is, a HUBZone is a historically underutilized business zone is an economically distressed region. Okay, that's all it is. It's just an area of there are several different agencies. Part of their job is to collect data, whether it's unemployment, labor statistics, if a military base closes, if it's Native American owned land, the Census Bureau collects this data as well. And if certain criteria are met and it meets a certain threshold of distress, then the SBA says this is now a historically underutilized business zone. The reason we have this program is because if we have HUBZone firms that are certified HUBZone firms, if they are able to get government contracts and they're able to get preferential treatment by getting HUBZone set-aside contracts, then by those small businesses getting government contracts, they're getting work, they're getting jobs. It's helping that small business. In turn, it's helping the employees in that business in that region, and hopefully it rises all ships. So HUBZones, the HUBZone program is the only program that we have that is not only based on needing to be a small business, but it's not necessarily who owns the business, but where is that business located? Is that business located in a HUBZone? And as you can imagine, when data changes, the information changes, then HUBZones change. So an area in Maine that was a HUBZone was listed as a HUBZone 10 years ago. If the economy in that area has gotten better, it might not be a HUBZone anymore. So this is a perfect example of, these rules aren't static. And my advice to any small business in government contracting, whether you're a women-owned small business or veteran-owned or a HUBZone, make sure someone in your small business, you or someone else, is paying attention to all of these programs and their eligibility requirements, because sometimes they change. For instance, the women-owned small business, up until last year, that certification was a self-certified. It is now you have to apply to the SBA. Well, if you haven't been paying attention and you don't know that, you definitely don't want to tell an agency that you're going after a contract that you're a certified women-owned small business if you're not. So back to the HUBZone program, our role is to implement the program. We determine who's eligible, who's not. We have a list of qualified firms. We handle HUBZone protests. I talked about what a protest was earlier. We have to do what's called site visits. I'm the lucky guy for the district office. We talked about businesses not being eligible for programs and certifications. What we don't want is we don't want a business to say that they're an economically distressed business, that they're in a location that's economically distressed, and to be able to get some of these set aside contracts when they're not, because that's not fair to the businesses that do need this preferential treatment. So based on the number of contracted dollars that HUBZone firms get, those of us here in the district offices and the field offices, we have to do what's called site visits. And it's not really, it's not a gotcha moment. I always go with a resource guide and try and tell the business owner, here's the other programs that the SBA has to help, but I do need to check to make sure that your business is located where you say it is, because we don't want you taking away from other HUBZone firms if you shouldn't be. And we also maintain the HUBZone map. So you can go to the SBA's website and see, all you have to do is type in your business's address and you can see if you could potentially be eligible for the HUBZone certification. So as I mentioned, the goal is to increase the employment, help these small businesses get contracts, and through the multiplier effect, allow help these economically distressed regions get better, strengthen their economy. So if a region loses its HUBZone status, it's a good thing. It means that the data in that area the economy is getting stronger. It's a good thing. It can be frustrating for a HUBZone firm if you're not able to keep that certification. HUBZone is also unique in the sense that I talked about. It's based also on geography of the small business. It's also the one that does not require direct ownership, which means that the small business could be owned by a trust or an estate, an intermediary like that. It doesn't have to be owned directly by an individual. That individual can own a trust that owns the HUBZone. That's important. And you can see here that part of the eligibility is you have to have a certain number of your employees live in a HUBZone, because remember that multiplier effect. We want the business to get contracts, and we want those employees of that small business to benefit from those contracts. So those are some of the checks that we look for in the application and site visit process. So the benefits of the HUBZone are not only the set-asides. In some cases, sole source contracts are available. I mentioned what a sole source contract was when I talked about the NonADay program. There's also, the same subcontracting opportunities. If you're looking for subcontracting opportunities, our recommendation is always to tell the large business, hey, we're a HUBZone firm, we're an NonADay firm, we're a women-owned firm. You want us to be your sub, because we can not only do the work, but we'll help you with your small business subcontracting goals that the SBA is requiring you to have. The other unique benefit of the HUBZone program is we have what's called the 10% price preference. Now, this only applies in a full and open competition. A full and open competition is not a small business set aside. So this is when an agency has put a contract out for bid for any business, small or large, small or not small, to apply. In those cases, when a HUBZone places, puts an RFP, responds to a request, if the HUBZone firm, if that firm's price to the government to complete that contract is no more than 10% than what above what the large business in that competition gave to the government for a price to complete this contract, the government has to view that HUBZone firm as the lowest bidder. And what that means is the federal government is acknowledging that if you are a HUBZone firm and you are located in an economically distressed area, it costs more for you to do this contract. And so that's why that 10% price preference is there. And so in contracts where the final award, when part of that award has to be, part of the qualifications are low bid, that can come in very handy if you're a HUBZone firm applying for a full and open competition. And I have seen protests where a HUBZone firm was not treated as the lowest bidder. They protested to the agency. The agency contacted the GAO, the Government Accountability Office, and the Small Business Administration, and both agencies sided with that HUBZone firm and said, yes, you need to treat that HUBZone firm as the low bidder based on this 10% price preference rule. And the HUBZone got a small business got that contract. So it's a lot of stuff for a program. It's a lot of information, but it's just an example of the preferential treatment that the federal government is trying to give small businesses in government contracting. And this is just, like I said, this is a Maine specific, but these are the HUBZones that were in Maine at the time that this PowerPoint was made. I believe they might actually have shifted since then. But if you just go to our website, you can see not only if your business is located in a HUBZone, but there are lots of little videos and instructional videos that show you the important components of eligibility and what you need to gather for documents before you apply. There's a lot of information on the SBA website. If you go to the SBA website at sba.gov, you'll find that at the top of the page, there are different tabs. And I think there's the launch your business, fund your business, grow your business, federal contracting tabs. If you click on any one of these tabs, it'll take you to a bunch of information that's public information, that it's always important to read this stuff before you apply for any program. So the next certification is the Women-Owned Small Business Program, and also the Economically Disadvantaged Women-Owned Small Business Set Aside. And what that means is, just as it said, there's the Women-Owned Small Business Program. You've been certified as a women-owned small business. A woman or women own 51% and have daily control and management of that small business. Or if it's an economically disadvantaged women-owned small business, it means the small business owner's net worth is less than a certain threshold. What's unique about this program is when it comes to the industry codes. Now, once you get into government contracting, you'll hear all these acronyms, and you'll see that tonight I'm doing my best to stay away from all these acronyms, but it is alphabet soup. One of the most common acronyms that you're going to hear in government contracting is NAICS code, or North American Industry Classification System. All it means is the government has assigned a number, a numerical designator, to every type of industry that we can think of, whether it's construction, whether it's real estate brokerage services, whether it's supplying safety valves, manufacturing, you name it. Every industry has a code. Okay, I talked about the government. Federal government's really big. We have our own language, right? This is part of that language. So there are this slide is a little outdated. I apologize. There are, for the women-owned small business and the economically disadvantaged women-owned small business program, there are, this is old, there's over 200 industry codes that the contracting officers are required by law to try and award these contracts to women-owned small businesses first. When they're doing their contract forecasts and their requests for proposals, they have to try and award the contracts to women-owned small businesses first. So I mentioned that this slide's a little dated. I apologize. There's many more industry codes that are set aside only for women-owned small businesses to apply. You only need to get certified if you're going after those industry codes, that type of work. But there are hundreds of them where women-owned small businesses get first try at these contracts. And that, I talked about shrinking the pool of competition. It greatly shrinks the pool of competition that these women-owned small businesses are up against. Again, it comes down to 51% owning and controlling. It's got to be direct ownership, which is different than the HUBZone program. And you have to be in control of the strategic policy, day-to-day management, and hold the highest position in the firm. The SBA is moving towards all of these certification programs being in the same platform where you apply for one, and over the last, and all of your information is in that secure database. And over the last couple of years, we've matched the economic disadvantage thresholds in some of our programs. So the NonADay program and the economically disadvantaged women-owned small business program have the same net worth thresholds, because that just makes more sense. So these are just the requirements for the economically disadvantaged in terms of what the net worth cannot exceed of the individual who owns that small business. And we look at gross income over the last 3 years. We look at fair market value of your assets. But what we don't do, and this is a recent change that's better, is we exclude your retirement, your IRA or your retirement accounts, especially if you're a 35-year-old woman who owns a small business and you've been putting into your own retirement since you were 20 years old, and there is a huge penalty for you to take your retirement now at the age of 35. We don't want to hold that against you, because you won't be taking your retirement out. Hopefully you won't need to. So we don't want to hold that retirement nest egg against you in terms of your net worth when we do this calculation. So that's an important change that we made a few years ago. So many of for all of these programs, where I talked about, you have to identify yourself to the government in our database. And that database is called the System for Award Management, or SAM. And you go into SAM and you create a profile that checks all the categories of what your business does. What industry does your business operate in? Could be more than one. What type of certifications do you have? Are you a small business? Once you're in that system, then you start to look for and start to market yourself to contracting agencies. It's important to know that once you create a profile in that database, there is another database called the Dynamic Small Business Search Page. And that is a database that's maintained by the SBA that lists all of the small businesses, or was supposed to list all of the small businesses that are looking or interested in government contracts, or at least have enrolled in the System for Award Management. That is the major tool that contracting officers and large businesses use to look for small businesses. So I talked about the market research that contracting officers do to find suitable small businesses so they can make the decision, do I set this aside for an 8A firm as a sole source, or do I set it aside for a veteran-owned small business? The dynamic small business search page is one of the most important resources that you can know about. You can go in there once you've created your profile in SAM, or the System for Award Management, and then you can see how your business comes up. And so what you could do is you could see how your competitors are showing up in that system, so you can see how you maybe want to tailor your profile to catch the eye of those contracting officers. So the set-aside contracts, the set-aside programs are one of the major benefits of government contracting. Another benefit of government contracting is what's called a mentor-protege program, and many agencies have had a mentor-protege program, and the SBA launched ours in 2016. What a mentor-protege program is it's an agreement between a small business, which is the protege, and a large business. In many cases, it can be a small business, but a large business is agreeing to be your mentor. And so you enter into a contract for like 3 years with a large business because you lack some sort of resource or capacity as a small business that you want to develop. Maybe you don't have, you're very good at making a product, or machining a valve that the Navy might want to buy, but you don't have the administrative personnel in your small business to be able to go after government contracts, because you just don't have the resources there in that part of your small business. You can enter into a mentor-protege program agreement with a large business who can, it says, it's just like it sounds, mentor. They can mentor you, they can help you build your capacity in certain areas of your small business that you're a little weaker in. And in that process, because you're in a mentor-protege agreement, it's a contract, the components of your small business and that other business can create what's called a joint venture, which is a separate business entity that is now allowed to go after small business set-aside contracts. So the benefit of this program is it allows you as the small business to get help and mentoring from a larger business, and it helps you go after contracts that you might not be able to go after because they might be too big or too large in scope, but they're still small business set-aside contracts. So it's a really great program. And the government, I talked about, many agencies have had this type of program, and what the agencies do is they have incentives for large businesses to enter into these types of programs, like a point system. But it's important for not only the large businesses, but the government and the industrial base of all these industries to have capable small businesses going after these contracts. Many of the contracts that are awarded, even the contracts that are, enormous in monetary value, the large business that was awarded that contract, they're not doing all of the work. They have many subcontractors that are helping them complete that inherently governmental work. So it's an important tool, the mentor protege program. It's not a matchmaking. The SBA doesn't provide matchmaking services, so we're not going to help you find a mentor. We are going to, make a decision on if it's an eligible mentor protege agreement. So it's important to understand who's in your industry and have a working relationship or a relationship with this mentor, this large company, before you enter into a mentor-protege agreement. And you can go to our website and see examples of what these agreements look like, and examples of how this type of agreement has helped small businesses develop and increase their potential and their capacity in government contracting. This next slide, this bottom piece of this slide, just talks about the veteran-owned small business certification, and we are in the beginning stages right now. If you want to get a contract with the Department of Veterans Affairs and you're veteran owned, you have to be certified through the VA's vet biz or veteran certification. So you have to apply to the VA because the VA has a requirement that when they award contracts, they have to look for veteran owned businesses too. But that's only for VA contracts. If you want to get a contract with let's say the Department of Commerce, and you want to say that you're a veteran-owned small business, because you are, right now it's a self-certify process. So you would just self-certify, yes, I'm veteran-owned, here's my DD 214. Starting next January, the SBA is going to be responsible for certifying all veteran-owned small businesses, regardless of agency. That way, as I mentioned earlier, all the agencies have confidence that if you say you're a veteran-owned small business, the business administration has vetted you and said, yes, this is a veteran-owned small business. So that you can find out more about that upcoming process on our website at sba.gov. And anyone who gets certified by the VA between now and next January as a veteran-owned small business, your certification will automatically transfer over. You won't have to apply to the SBA again when SBA assumes the responsibility for this vetting process. I talked about the platform that all of these certifications are entered into or are hoped to be entered into. That's certified.sba.gov. That's the platform where hopefully eventually one day all of these certifications for you will be in that one secure website, and the contracting officers, when you apply for a contract or you respond to a bid, they can just go into certify and see, yep, they're women-owned, veteran-owned, small business. They are who they say they are. The dynamic small business search page, I talked about that. It's a very important tool for not only small businesses, but contracting officers as well. So again, the process starts by you identifying your small business as a willing contractor in the government's database, the System for Award Management. And you can go to sba.gov/contracting to learn how to do that. I talked in the beginning about partner organizations that can help you with all of this at no charge. One of those organizations is called the Procurement Technical Assistance Center, or PTAC. There's another acronym, right? This is a nationwide organization that's funded by the Department of Defense and state governments. There are many organizations like that funded by both the state and the feds that help you at no charge with everything that I just talked about in government contracting. So they can help you enroll in the system. They can help you identify your business to the government. They can help you look for government contracts. They can help you understand how to and help you write proposals. They can help you with different agency requirements in terms of understanding, believe it or not, the Department of the Navy might have different packaging requests than the Department of the Air Force when it comes to supplying them with goods or services. So the procurement technical assistance centers are across the country. Here in Maine, their headquarters is in Bangor, and they have 10 advisors across the state that can help you not only look for contracts, but understand everything there is to know about the contracting process, from how to write proposals to understanding the clauses in a contract. It's important to know that when you enter into a contract with an agency, you are bound by that contract. Okay, so when you sign on that dotted line, you're saying that you understand everything that's required of you that's in this contract. Okay, now the government, and in that contract, there's going to be a scope of work. There's going to be a description of what the government wants you to do, and there's also going to be several clauses, okay, several bits of legal mumbo jumbo that say what your responsibility is and what the government's responsibility is. Now you're bound by that contract, and the agency is bound by that contract and the federal acquisition regulations. So it's a whole body of regulations that contracting officers have to be trained on, so they know, depending on what type of contract what contract it is and what type of situation, what basically requirements or clauses to put in that contract beyond what we want you to do for us in this contract. So the Procurement Technical Assistance Center staff can help you with that. They can help you understand. They routinely work with us at SBA here in Maine to give presentations on all of these programs and more about everything I mentioned, and in much more detail. I think my next slide, I don't have, if you are on the SBA website in the federal contracting tab, you'll be able to find the nearest Procurement Technical Assistance Center. And I would highly recommend, if you're interested in government contracting, that you become a PTAC client. It's free, it's at no charge. Our tax dollars have already paid for it. It's a super program. There's a lot of great staff nationwide, and they go above and beyond many times to help you understand government contracting. As we wrap up, I've been talking a lot. I want to be able to get some Q&A if we have time, but again, it's important to know all of the help that's out there to get certified in these programs if you think you're eligible, because it helps increase your competitive nature against other small businesses when you're looking to pursue government contracts. But you have to remember, you could spend all of your time getting certified as 8A, women-owned, veteran-owned, and you can have the nicest SAM profile, but if you don't do market research and self-marketing of your small business, you're not going to get any contracts. You still have to communicate to the agencies who you are, what you do, and why they should be looking for your capability statement, and why they should be paying attention to your response to a request for proposal. We work with PTAC, the Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, all over the country, and we do roundtables and workshops. One of the things that we did, we've been doing them during COVID virtually, and we did them in person before COVID, was we would hold what's called matchmakers, where we would have these large events where we would invite the small business community, and we would invite government agencies and large businesses, and put everybody in a room, and it would be like speed dating. So you could sign up in advance as a business owner with the agency officials that you think you might want to enter into contracts with, and you could introduce yourself to them. There's there's this myth that you can't call a contracting officer. You can. Every agency has an office of small business development and utilization to make sure that the agencies are hitting their small business contracting goals. So it's important to know who those agency officials are, and SBA's job is to try and help you make connections at events like this. And as I mentioned, this is a Maine specific presentation. This is the website for the Procurement Technical Assistance Centers here in Maine, but they're a national organization. So all you have to do is you could Google Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, or you could find the nearest advisor or PTAC on our website. And this is my contact information, and we'll make sure that everyone has a copy of this slide deck when this is done. And with that, I know it's an awful lot of information, but I just want to thank Rose and Black-owned Maine and all the great work they do, and thank you for the time today. I think we still have a few more minutes. If there are any questions, I like easy questions, but if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them. And Rose, I don't know how you want to do it. If you want to, I don't know if there were questions in the chat or.
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, folks, feel free to speak up and unmute yourself if you have a question that you want to say aloud. Oops, sorry about that.
So I do see one here, Angela. Yes, for the mentor protege program, it is important to have a relationship or to know who that large company is before you enter into a mentor protege, to be familiar with them. That's really important, because you are going to be entering into a contract with this firm, so you want to be comfortable with them.
Hey, Jim, this is Crystal. You might have answered this already. I apologize. I had to step away for a moment. But for 8A eligibility with the $250,000 in annual revenue, is that adjusted gross income or gross revenue?
I believe it's adjusted, but I have to I can double check on that, Crystal.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So this is Erickson also. I have 3 quick questions. So the first one, can a sole proprietor or LLC with a unique member apply for this grant? That's the first question. The second question, you did mention for something that more than 51 employees must be USA citizens. So by USA citizens, do you mean somebody who has like USA passport, or you may also include like a permanent resident?
The first answer is yes, and the second answer is legal permanent resident, I believe.
Okay, so it does include those who have a Social Security employment authorization document. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, hello. My name is Betty.
Hi, Betty.
And I work for Greater Southwest. And I just have a little question because I know that you did ask. I mean, in all the presentation, I heard that you have to be like Black minority owned and that. But I didn't hear here, and obviously it's my interest because of the community that I am in. Is that just if you are Latin American, can you apply to be a minority? Because what you had over there is like you have to be Latin American, but also you have to be, or Hispanic, but you have to be Black. And no. I was like, I mean, I'm kind of dark, so maybe I can apply, but I mean, how that works?
No, that was my fault. You don't have to be Black to be eligible for the 8A program.
Okay.
There are a few social classes, Black is one of them, where you're presumed eligible, so you don't have to provide examples of how you were discriminated against or disenfranchised. But if you're not Black or Native American, then you just have to provide examples of, I'm sorry, I know it happens all too often, of how you were held back socially or economically based on your class. And the website has some examples
Okay.
of the narrative. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Because I
Yeah.
also have sometimes, and not for these specific programs, where I have Middle Eastern people that
Yeah.
they own it, and they are not African Americans, they are not Hispanic. They are a minority in theory, but sometimes it's difficult to determine who really can qualify and who doesn't. But I will check because she was very kind and she sent me like a link that I couldn't check, but I will check and probably the answer is right there.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. Thanks, Betty.
Thank you.
I like them so far. They're easy questions. Keep them
Hi.
coming.
I have a question. Sorry, you caught me in a mouthful of dinner.
That's okay.
You listed industry codes, and I'm sure with all the websites, there might be somewhere listed all the resources, but I was interested as a small business, would my business fit and how would I find the industry code to determine that?
So you could go to the SBA's website, and in the federal contracting tab at the top, we have several overviews of everything that I just talked about. And there are links to the NAICS, the North American Industry Code classification book, that lists all of the industries, the numbers, and what actual industry that's talking about. So you can find that on our website. And you could also Google it, but I would feel more confident that you're looking at an up-to-date version if you started from our website. And as a matter of fact, the NAICS codes are currently being revised right now, not all of them, but there will be some updated numbers in the coming months. So it's important to make sure that you verify it's from our website. And if there's so much information, you know, and I know if you had to listen to me for the last hour and a half, you probably think, well, I don't want to hear any more. But there's so much information that's on our website that if you can take the time to look at that a little bit, you'll see how much knowledge is out there on the public SBA website, but you'll also see the organizations and parts of the SBA, the employees within the SBA and the other organizations that I mentioned that can help you learn more about this in more detail. You know, I talked about the large businesses needing to provide a subcontracting plan to the SBA to make sure that we're comfortable that these large businesses are utilizing enough small businesses as subcontractors. Well, that's not something that I view. There's somebody else in the SBA with another job title that's responsible for reviewing those. And all that information is on our website. And if you ever have any questions, you can always call or email me, or you can find the district office personnel in your state and ask them to, you know, it's really important to the government's mission, you know, to be able to provide for the common good, that we have a very strong small business community to help with government contracts. And, you know, not just for the government, but for the public. And one thing, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned this, the procurement technical assistance centers are allowed to help you in regards to federal contracting, but also state contracting and local contracting. So they can help you learn about all three branches of contracting. I can only help you with the federal side because I'm a federal employee, but the PTAC folks can help you with all that, because like I mentioned, some of the states are so large, like California, for instance. California has a small business certification program through the state of California. So you could get certified by the state of California if you wanted to get California state contracts as a small business. The state of Maine, we've got a few less people than California, so we don't have that type of set aside process and portfolio. But the people, the folks at the Procurement Technical Assistance Centers can help you understanding all that. And I apologize, I think that was a very long answer to your quick question.
Does anyone have any more questions? You do have a couple minutes left if there's anything left. We also I'll be sending out the recording tomorrow. You can watch it on YouTube, as well as the slide deck, which you can look through as well, and any relevant links that we talked about. But if anyone has a question, now's the time to ask.
Hi, this is Vemba. I own a small business called Community Event Center. First of all, I want to thank you guys for this opportunity. This is awesome. And I wanted to know, how often will we be having these meetings? Because I think it is important, and getting to know all these, getting all this information, and just wanted to know how often will we have this meeting?
Yeah, good question. So Black-owned Maine, as a whole, we're going to be hosting more workshops. We actually have an upcoming workshop on marketing for the next 4 weeks, starting on the 10th. So we're going to be hosting workshops, throughout the months on various topics. So if there's anything that sticks out to you, you can always send us a DM, on Instagram or Facebook. Let us know what you're interested in. And I'll also, when I send out the recording tomorrow and the slide deck, I'll include our email in there too. So you can always reach out to us and let us know. And I'll also include a link to where you can sign up for any future events. And as far as SBA events, I mean, there are SBA events happening all the time, right? But perhaps there's a need to continue this one a few more times, it feels like.
I didn't want to speak for Rose, but I would say you probably don't want to see me every time, but I'll come back whenever Rose invites me. So because hopefully some of you might have joined us last week too, and I talked about at the beginning, we have programs to help small businesses in government contracting, but also programs to help small businesses who are looking for financing or technical advice. So anything we can do to help, we're just so happy to be a part of this series. And thanks a lot, Rose. This has been great.
Yes, I also would like to point out that I think it will be very important to start having this meeting like in person. I mean, and whenever the Black-owned business want to do anything like that in Lewiston area, I'm willing to give my space, my venue. We have a lot of space and chairs and table, and we can even have a small lunch after the whenever we have this kind of meeting. I think there is a lot of people wanted to participate, but and also want to greet and meet kind of event with a gym, explaining all these sort of things will be helpful for the community as well. So Black-owned Maine, whenever you want to do anything like that, just let us know, and our space is your space.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'll grab your email from the participant list, and we can reach out after the event. Thank you.
Hey, Rose, I have just another 2 more questions that are related, if you don't mind. Okay, so Jim, I'm curious, there may be people on the call who haven't yet started a business yet, or who may be thinking about starting a second or third business. Do you have, or can you provide any insight on kind of the NAICS code that might be most interesting or most accessible for minority-owned businesses? And then the second part of the question is, given that there's so much information on the SBA websites, and definitely, you know, I would encourage, and I will also go on and do some exploration as well. Is there a typical sequence that companies should think about following?
Great.
So those are the
great,
two questions. Thanks.
Great questions. So I spoke to this a little earlier. I never want to say the government doesn't buy what you make or produce, because the government buys so much, and so it's honestly it's hard to say yes or no when someone asks, does the government have, you know, would they be interested in this? Odds are there's an agency or department that is interested and does buy something that you make. And what you could do is work with the Procurement Technical Assistance Center staff at no charge to see what your ideas are, and to see what agencies might be purchasing that idea. That being said, I should have mentioned this earlier. Historically, there were rules that you had to be in business for at least 2 years before you could get a government contract. And the rationale behind that was, you know, the taxpayers don't want to be spending money on startups. You know, they want to make sure that the government is entering into contracts with established businesses that have shown they can complete this type of work. That rule or law no longer exists, like in statute. However, in practice, in real world application, a lot of contracting officers are not going to feel comfortable awarding a contract unless you've been in business for a couple of tax seasons. And it's because I talked about past performance and the ability to show this is our previous work, whether government or non-government. This is what we've done in the past to give confidence to the contracting agency that we could do this work. So if you're a startup, my advice would be to work with Black-owned Maine, work with the agency officials, partners, whether it's women business centers or small business development centers, to get your business up and running. And not that you're going to have a lot of time, but as you can, learn about government contracting and learn about maybe subcontracting, and maybe start as a subcontractor. One of the tools that's out there that the SBA maintains is called the subnet, and it is and I only didn't put this in the slide because it would have just freaked Rose out if I had any more in these slides. But that's a platform that has it's basically like a monster.com for the large primes, the large companies. When what they do is they put the type of work that they're looking for subs for, and the small businesses can look at that, basically these job ads from these large businesses. Now, the subnet was one of the earlier SBA tools, and now a lot of these big companies, they have their own websites and their own platforms. And so if you want to, General Dynamics is a perfect example. You know, General Dynamics owns Bath Iron Works in Maine, and General Dynamics has 4 corporate units based on what they do. And if you want to be a subcontractor for General Dynamics, it behooves of you to enter your profile in their database so they see you. So those are things that, you know, you learn when you attend webinars like this and you work with the Procurement Technical Assistance Center folks, so you can learn, you know, sort of those cheat codes in government contracting. But again, it always comes down to marketing your small business, and you know, sometimes it's the advocate too. You know, sometimes it's, if you reach out to an organization and they say, oh, your government doesn't want what you're selling, maybe call somebody else. Maybe, you know, we don't hear that a lot anymore, thank goodness, but there's just so much out there. That, you know, there's the, you know, the Federal Procurement Data System is another website that you'll see linked to from the System for Award Management that shows everything the government has bought. So then you can see not only what the government bought, but who they bought it from. Because all these contracts that I've talked about and I've referenced, unless they're, you know, Department of Defense or state secret squirrel sort of stuff, you know, classified to protect us all, it's public information. So it's just a matter of learning all those resources and finding the advocacy organizations like SBA and Black-owned Maine and PTAC, and that can help you kind of surf through that and help you diversify your revenue. Again, another very long-winded answer.
It was super helpful. Thanks.
All right, great. Well, we're going to wrap it up here. So as I mentioned, we're going to send out this recording tomorrow. It's going to be on YouTube, on Black-owned Maine's YouTube. We also have the recording from last week, which talked about SBA's programs and resources. I'll send a link to that too, as well as both slide decks, just for anybody who missed last week's or wants to revisit this week's presentation. And we'll also send a link out to our marketing events that are coming up, and they're open to everybody, regardless, you know, of where you're from. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you coming in, and we'll talk soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks. See you later, Rose.
Thank you.